for this segment of Midlife Motherhood. We're talking about marriage today. I am so honored to have my friend Diane McDaniel join us today. You and your husband Danny have been married for more than 30 years, and you have 3 adult children, 2 of which are married, and you are now enjoying grandmotherhood.
Yeah.
And I think over the last, is it more than 2 decades, you've been mentoring people in both business and marriage through ministry. And I wanted to read this because this was so powerful to me. So you have a specific passion to help families break cycles of dysfunction and continual negative patterns so that health can be sustained and to create a lasting family legacy. All I have to say to that is sign me up. So thank you so much for joining us today. So before we get started, kind of tell me a little bit about, I mentioned that you and Danny have been married for more than 30 years. How has your relationship and marriage evolved over that time?
Yeah. Well, we've been married for 33 years and we have raised 3 boys and they're all adults now, which is hallelujah. You're like, so that's always a joy. 2 of them are married. One of them has given us 4 grandchildren. And so, yes, having that season of life has been a lot of fun, but yeah, you go through all the seasons. Like, that's the reality of being married. And that doesn't mean that the seasons are all easy either, because we know that we go through hard seasons and we go through good seasons and we go through fun seasons and we go through not so fun seasons. But, our biggest thing was the focus of commitment. That was something that Danny and I really believed in very strongly. Danny's background and his family is all divorced. Everybody's divorced. I mean, his whole lineage and his family tree is divorced, including his sisters. And so for me, nobody was divorced. Everybody stayed married. And so we come together and we've got this, total separation in one family tree and, health in the other family tree in that area, because we had, areas that we weren't healthy in our family tree, but that was something that was strong. And so we had decided that this was going to be for us. And so there were some things we put in place in the beginning that we would not use this was just stuff that, because when you come from dysfunction, you can either choose it or you can change it, right?
Right.
Both of us came from dysfunction. And so we knew there was a lot of things that we learned from our parents that we didn't want to do. Right. And so we were choosing to change it. And so that's where Danny and I put some things in place, even early, even not really knowing what was ahead, that we were going to just commit to in our marriage, like not use the word divorce. Not say, I hate you or belittle each other. I mean, there was just some really, they seem like they would be obvious for healthy marriages, but when we don't think ahead, we just in our emotions allow things to go. And when things just go, we can't take it back.
Right.
It's that's out there now in the atmosphere. It's words that we've spoken. It's words that now we've given right to the enemy to use against us. And so we, even in our very immature stages, knew that we wanted to do things different. His parents would scream at each other, and there was a lot of yelling and all of this, just hate and, addiction. And then on my side of the family, there was alcoholism and depression. And so we were like, we don't want that. We wanted to change that negative cycle of dysfunction. And so we started putting things in place to make sure that we did it. So that's what really made the impact for us. It was a decision, right? And it didn't have to be early. I mean, if somebody's just now hearing this, they can make this decision right now in their marriage. We're not going to not sleep together because we're mad at each other. We're not going to say the word divorce. I'm not going to go, into the guest room and pout. I'm not going to call my mother and start telling her what an awful person you are. Like, just put some things in place that make sense and bring health, so that as you go through the seasons, because they come, the seasons happen. Not every day is beautiful, right? Not everything's glorious. There's times that I loved him, but I didn't like him. And that's the reality of marriage. But because we put some things in place early, we knew that we were each other's forever. We knew that this is a bond that we've made that was for real, and not just for us, but for the benefit of our legacy, which was Cam, Gavin, and TJ, our children. We wanted our commitment to each other to be healthy for their future also, right? Because our dysfunction creates dysfunction for our own children and their families. So we wanted to cut the cord on that. And so that was just some decisions we made early on. And as we learned more and became healthier and more mature as adults and individuals, then that just continued to get better, right?
Good.
Does that make sense?
Good nuggets. And I love how it was the decision to stay committed, because it is a decision every day. So now that you're in a different stage of life, parenting your kids, and then they're grown and flown, establishing their families, how has your relationship changed, or what did you have in place to where you remained connected? So when your kids left, you weren't like, oh, you're a complete stranger, I don't know you. What are some words of wisdom or advice you could give?
So true. And that's really what happens, right? For so many families, their life is revolving around their children. And of course, we love, love, love our boys. And they were always incredible from little to big. And, but at the same time, we knew that first and foremost, our marriage was what was most important for the sake of the boys, just like I was just referring to, on top of knowing that someday they would be gone, and it wouldn't be about the boys. It would be about him and I, our life together, because that's what we said I do to is for the rest of our life. And so it took a while to really get to the understanding of how we had to pour into our marriage. Right. I was 4 months pregnant when I got married. So we immediately became parents. So we're newlyweds. We're figuring this thing out called, marriage. And then, oh, by the way, I now have a newborn. And so everything happened really quick. So we literally had to start understanding what it meant to focus on each other, because our world was built around focus on the kids, right? Or even for Danny, focus on his career, because he wanted to be the most winningest football coach in the state of Texas, because he was a coach and became an athletic director. So his career was before our marriage was. And that's not an unusual thing. It's not a healthy thing, but it's not an unusual thing. We have so many other areas that we pour into, that we want to become better in, and that we want to learn to be greater in, but we don't stop to do that for our own marriage with the person that we're going to spend the rest of our life with. And that wouldn't we want to do that with joy and excitement, passion, and expectancy? Yes. And so, but we have to start learning this even at a younger age. So we were married 10 years, Sarah, before we really figured this out. Danny and I traveled a lot. We worked together. He changed his profession to where we were working together in a company where we worked side by side. And so we were always together, but that doesn't mean that we were pouring into our marriage, right? It just meant that we worked together. Now we're business partners, right? And so we would have to travel on business trips, and we would get away. And so it was hard for my husband to understand that I wanted to get away with him. I was intentional about us, not a business trip, and he was like, it's hard because we get away several times, through the year because of business. And so when we get away, I want to get away with the kids. I'm like, we can get away with the kids, but in the meantime, we also have to get away with each other. And so actually, he was not in agreement to this. I actually had to ask him. We have something called that we learned how to get what we call accountability partners. So when we're not in agreement to something, then I would say, hey, I want you to take this to, whoever that accountability partner was. Hey, I want you to take this to them. And I want to, and ideally we like to do it together, but sometimes
that's a great idea.
It's huge because it allowed, obviously he's my husband. I'm going to love and respect him, and what he says, I'm going to, go with, because I honor him. Right. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when I'm not in agreement with him, I need third party credibility. Right. So whatever that person, because I trust that credibility partner, and so does my husband. And we always had a couple, a husband and a wife. then they would give their wisdom and their experience and their sound counsel that would give us an understanding of what would be right. And so I said, I want you to have that conversation. And they came back and said, yes, it's important for you to, be healthy in this area and get away. 10 years. We had never gotten away, 10 years. And so we did. And we started to realize that changed everything. That allowed us to start understanding what it was like to have fun with each other, with kids around, not with other people around, but him and I, that we could still like get together and have conversations that weren't about football. And so it was really, really amazing. And that comes down to, yes, it depends on what you can afford. Like you said, it may be just a sleepover at your local hotel. It doesn't have to be to the Bahamas or to Fiji. I mean, obviously we can dream, right? Why not have something great? But we both started to realize it was important for us to be intentional. So we just started making it a priority for around our anniversary. It didn't have to be right on our anniversary, but around our anniversary, we would always plan a trip to get away. And if it was just a long weekend, 3-night stay, then it was enough to recharge us and refresh us and re-excite us and reconnect us so that we could push forward again in health. Made a huge difference.
Absolutely. And I love that, and sometimes you have to get creative. Like I know in my household, we did kid swap with my sister and her husband. So we'd have all the kids one night and then we'd send, and so they could have time together and then we'd trade off. And that was no cost for childcare and no cost for where you stayed because you just stayed in your space, but then you could go out on a date night. So just even a little quick 24-hour refresher. So getting creative, I think, is key for sure. And so now, with mentoring other married couples along the way, what have you found where people come to you and say, okay, hey, we're SOS, we need help? What do you find the most challenging thing for couples is who are approaching this, hey, my kids are in their teens, we're running kids, we're maybe talking about some of the surface level things, not having that deep connection. And then now their kids are graduating or in the process of moving on to next steps. What are you finding people are struggling with the most and what they're faced with most challenging?
Well, they don't know each other. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. They don't know how to have fun. They don't know how to laugh with each other. Everything has revolved around the kids. And so it's making that decision to not end up there. And if you already are there, then it's making that decision to reconnect and find ways to do that. And sometimes it literally is like getting plugged in to something that helps you learn how to love each other again, learn how to show love again, because even that can become very awkward. Like even just looking at your husband and just saying, I think you're a rock star. I think you're amazing. I love you so much. I'm so glad you're mine. I'm so blessed that we do life together. Those are not common words for many marriages. Those are hard things to say when you're not used to saying them. Even saying I love you can be difficult for some marriages because it's not a common thing to say. That was something that we have always made very common, not only to each other, but to our boys and our boys to each other and us to each other. Like our conversations always end with I love you. And so, and our boys' conversations with each other always end with I love you. Like we wanted it to be an understood thing that your words matter and that there's a connection through the words. So one of the things that Danny and I have actually put together, because we know that so many people just need to like figure out like how to move ahead, because we started understanding the power of like small group settings. We started to provide small group settings, like marriage. We would do like some marriage teachings together. Like we would just say, hey, 3 couples come over, and we do an in-home. We throw something on the TV, and we'd go through the process. We'd have a conversation with each other, and then it was just a way for us to start leaning in to our marriage and have our friends lean into their marriage. And so it sounds so simple, right? But it's time. It's like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to reserve this time every week for us to grow in our marriage. And we learned so much, Sarah,
Mm.
in that season when we were intentional about just putting our time into some different teachings, and they're out there and they're fantastic, or reading some books, and they're out there that are good, because we just don't stop to think about, you know, in fact, so often when we don't connect with other couples, or I don't connect with other women, or he doesn't connect with other men, again, in healthy, that's a word I want
Right.
to use, healthy small groups are ways of gathering, we so often think the other's broken, like there's
Right.
something wrong with you, especially the older we get, and our bodies change, our emotions change, our responses change, to where, he could have easily felt like something's wrong with you. Like, why don't you want me every single night? Like, I'm confused that you're
Right.
not just ripping my clothes off because nobody lives here anymore. We could run around naked. You know, there's that part of life that,
Right.
they so amazing, and we're in a season like, I just, I'm not there, like something's wrong, and and it's those hormones that start to change, and those changes in life that we have to now, process through and figure out, where we are as new individuals, right? And
Well,
so
and I love
these
what you said about being in a community, because then you can have that support system in place, and then you don't feel like you're on an island, right?
yeah,
Then the moment that I feel secluded and isolated, then all those lies start coming in, and before you know it, I'm believing them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so when you can share something, and there's a relatability, oh, you know what? I'm going through that too. Not a big deal. It diffuses
yeah,
some of those situations, which is
yeah.
awesome.
Well, even knowing that men are men and women are women, because so often when we get married, we think, well, that this is going to change, right? Like, you're going to get better there, or you're going to be better over here. It's almost like we marry this potential of perfection, meaning
Mm.
the potential of them being more like us, right? You're going to put your clothes in the basket when they're dirty, right? You're going to hang up the towel, aren't you?
Hope so, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna make the bed also, right? So, and then you get around other women that are like, my husband still does this, and he still does this, and it's still the same. And I'm like, then you start to realize this is the way many men think. Not all, but many men think. This is the way men are wired. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just different. It doesn't mean that he's not intentionally disrespecting me. He just doesn't connect the dots to think the dirty clothes goes in the basket.
Totally, totally. Well, and so I guess, with your 30 plus years of marriage, 33, and continuing to aim for that strengthened bond, what are some of the words of wisdom or things you go to really continue on that trajectory?
Okay, well, great question. And that's something that we have great passion for, because as I told you, Danny and I, we started doing business together over 27 years ago. And as a result, we noticed real quick that the way that we help somebody grow, and it was indirect sales. So we're in direct sales, so which we understood soon after we got into direct sales. Oh, this is marketplace ministry. Like, I'm
Mhm.
helping people in areas I never thought I was going to help them in.
Mhm.
Like, I'm thinking I'm helping them, get healthy and make money. And in reality, I can't help them with much when their marriage is a disaster.
Mm.
So we realized the healthier we could help their marriage become, the healthier than everything else became. And that
Wow.
is the
Yeah.
reality. And so we started to put together settings that were intentional for couples. And we started to be intentional even in our business settings, that we had a segment that was intentional for marriages, because so many of our friends and our team were married trying to work together, and that's a hard thing to do when they're not used to it. So that's what we started to realize. And I also love the fact that I love to gather groups of people and create lifetime memories. Like, that's just one of my favorite things to do. And so we actually started putting together something called Still the One, that is a marriage getaway. And so we want to create an experience. So it's not just classes, and it's not just a conference, but it's actually an experience that you take with other individuals that they're on the same journey. They may be in a different place, but their journey is to have the rest of their life to be amazing with each other, right? And so therefore we get away, usually Mexico. I want to get people away from the distractions of life, because there's no doubt, even when we stay home, we still are thinking about the kitchen has dirty dishes in it. There's laundry to be done. I really should vacuum. Are these sheets even clean?
Are you reading my mind?
So if we could just take all that out of the equation, we do all inclusive. And so I don't want them to have to think about anything else. Once they've paid the price, then the money's out of the question. They get to just enjoy the setting. And then we learn, we grow, and we connect together. And so this has been life-changing. And there's some things that Danny and I do that we feel very led to do specifically within this setting that is really, drilling into some areas that maybe people won't expect. But because we want to hit those deeper areas, not just trim the hedges, we want to hit the deeper areas that we make sure that when they go back, they feel like the wall is gone, and that there is clarity, the fog is gone, and that they really can communicate better, and they can respond better, and they can be healthier, and they can have more fun, and they're not going to let stress, anxiety, and worry control them, because emotions so much are the root of all evil, right? And so needless to say, this is something that Danny and I, because we loved what settings like this did for us, we've been very intentional and feel very called to do this for other couples. So that's something that we do. It's called Still the One.
So good. So how can people find you online and find out more information for the Still the One conference? Because that's coming up next year, correct? In February?
Yeah, we do it around Valentine's because it seems to be the perfect romantic time, right? Going into the new year also. So stilltheone.co, stilltheone.co is how you can get to our website. And we're also on Instagram. Still the One Marriage is our Instagram. And we also do podcasts to help people, get parenting tips, marriage tips, leadership tips, any mindset tips. I mean, we just want to help the whole body, right? Everything that somebody needs to become the greatest them, not only for themselves, but for each other as husband and wife. And then as, father and mother, because we know that's second, making sure that because if we can be greater in these areas, it's amazing how much fun we can have in life. It shouldn't be about, when's the next girl trip so I can have a good time. Right.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Looking forward to actually hanging out and developing that deeper connection with our spouse.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Diane, for joining me today. And I cannot wait to look you up on your podcast and your online. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us at home.